Hello, I'm Colin Gallagher, CEO at Onward and Upward, and you're listening to the Association 100 Podcast, where each week we interview association leaders from across the country to hear how they're trying new things, taking big risks, and delivering value for their members. We'll explore the realities of what it means to work in and with associations and bring you the insights and inspiration you need to advance your career and make big changes at your association. Let's get started. Welcome back to the A100 Podcast. I'm your host, Keaveny Hewitt, and I'm so excited for today's conversation as we dive deeper into our January media series focused on highlighting reporters, editors, and producers to get a better understanding of what drives the media and how they think about the news stories they cover. Our guest today is Alysia Wiebe, a news producer with ABC 30 out in Fresno, California. I've had the pleasure of working with Alysia on a handful of stories and knew she would bring a really unique and interesting perspective to our conversation today. Alysia, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm so excited.
Of course, excited to dive deeper into this conversation together. So let's start way back and start at the basics. So what initially drew you to the industry and, how has your career evolved over the years?
I would say growing up, my parents, we were just that family that always had local news on. And our favorite channel never changed was ABC 30 at all times. The local reporters and anchors were like celebrities to me growing up as a kid. So when I started college, I didn't know what I wanted to major in. I took a public speaking class and someone grabbed me and said, "Hey, you would probably do well in journalism." So I hit the ground running. I loved every single class I took. And I took that as a sign of this is where I'm meant to be. And I got an internship at ABC 30 and I just never left. I'm one of those weird ones that got their first job, moved their way up, and I've just kind of stuck around and been here ever since.
That's awesome. What a full circle moment too. And I can totally relate to the local news anchors and, meteorologists being celebrities. I know I'm from Raleigh, North Carolina, and our local meteorologist, her kid went to my elementary school. Whenever she would come and pick her up from carpool, I'd be like, "Mom, do you know who that is? This is so exciting." So that's awesome. That's really cool. Going off of that point, what about local journalism specifically, appealed to you the most?
I think it's just the connection of representing and shining a spotlight on your community. I think that can get lost in some of the more national shows that you watch, the CNNs or the ABC News of the world. I think the audience really, when they see what their community is being represented, let's say there's a new business or they see a protest down the street or people are losing their jobs and we are covering those stories and out there, I think that resonates with the community and builds trust, and they know that we're here for them rather than the other way around. So we're working for them, and our focus has always been just very local. And I think that's something that is unique to local news that will never really be lost or be phased out in any way. A lot of people are turning to maybe digital media or social media to get their news or headlines. But when you're a local news station like ABC 30, you know that is something that you can trust. It's something that is always going to be there, and you can fact check, and you know that there are people behind the headlines. There are writers, there are producers, there are a lot of very talented people I work with here that I know strive and work very hard to make sure we get the facts correct, where you don't maybe necessarily get that on a Instagram post, for example, or a blogger. But that's just one of those things that makes me so proud of working in this local news space.
Yeah, I know speaking on behalf of our work and our clients from a PR perspective, local journalism is definitely where it's at right now and where we've really been honing a lot of our focus in and working with amazing producers and people like yourself. But, really getting to tell those impactful stories at a local level and really reaching the people that matter the most. We've just seen a lot of success there for a lot of our clients in different industries.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you've been with ABC 30 for over a decade, looking at that local news aspect and angle. How have you seen local news adapt and change to audience behaviors and industry challenges? I know you just mentioned social media kind of being, obviously a completely new platform and way we get our news, but
How have you seen local news adapt to these changes in new audience behaviors?
Yeah, as a industry, news is constantly going to change. I don't think when I started 13 years ago, I started in the web atmosphere and I was sending out email breaking news alerts that would just go straight to someone's inbox. And now that looks like an app push. We call our digital team are amazing. They can see in real time how many people open the article. They can see how many people are right now looking at that article on our website. And I think that feedback is just so valuable to know. Sometimes that will change our decision day of what we're covering. Like, okay, people are obviously interested in this story. What can we do more? What's another angle? How do we dive deeper into that aspect? So I think going with how people consume their media, following along with letting our consumers take the lead on that, but also not ignoring a space either. I mean, we have an Instagram account, we have Facebook, we have all those, X, everything across the board, and just kind of adapting to, making TikTok videos, things like that. I think it's going to be interesting into the future of how that all looks. If we'll even have a website, is it going to be just an app? So I think it's exciting to see what will happen.
Yeah, I know I see so many local news stories from stations across the country just on my TikTok feed and Instagram reels and everything, which is just so interesting that that's how we're consuming news now. And, obviously from your perspective, you're having to rethink, okay, in 10 years, will this website be useful for us? Will people even be going here? Do we need to be right in people's hands on their phones? Is that the most effective way to reach people? So that's so interesting to think about how you guys are kind of changing things from a leadership perspective of where do we need to be and how do we need to reach people?
It'll be so funny too, what will go viral. It'll be just the craziest thing, a bear walking around in Yosemite, and then someone across the country will be like, I saw ABC 30 on my Instagram page. And we're like, how is this video going viral? Like, it's so cool. It's fun to see.
It's also interesting to think about from like a reach perspective. You're able to reach a lot more people who aren't, just based in the Fresno area. You're able to reach people all over just because of social media. So that's fascinating too, that it's local journalism, but it's also expanded significantly to who your kind of audience is.
Yeah.
So reflecting back on your time so far at ABC 30, what have been some of your most rewarding or memorable moments or any stories you've really enjoyed working on or that were super impactful for you?
I think just anything that can help our community. I mean, the pandemic was obviously a huge time where people were looking to us on where do you go? What do you do? It was just kind of a scary time. We were all working from home, but I like that we are the source to turn to in times of kind of unknown. But the rewarding ones are when something airs maybe on Live at 3 and people come and tell me, I saw you on the news. And then that business comes back and tells us all of our friends and family loved it. And I got to share it with family across the country, or their business saw a huge amount of customers the next day just because they saw it on the news. That's really rewarding for me personally. And just making an impact on people. I'll read comments or hear from people that say, I watch you every single day. And for me, that's a real huge invitation for them to invite our show into their home or maybe on their phone. That is something that they make time for, or they look forward to, or it makes them feel good or happy. The Live at 3 is an interesting show because it starts with some news, but then it goes into the long form interviews that you've helped me set up with. It. Maybe it's about feeling anxiety or checking in on your mental health, or we've had different segments covering that topic, which I think mental health is a huge priority right now for people. So it's been fun to just kind of let the show breathe a little bit and do some more digital or Zoom conversations with people from all over the world sometimes. So it's been cool.
I love that. And you actually are a perfect segue into my next question, which I want to dive into all things Live at 3. So I just want to know more about what inspired this creation and what really sets it apart from other local broadcast stations.
Yeah, so our company, there was a new time slot period that was opening up across many of our stations. So ABC 30 is actually an O&O, which means it's owned and operated by Disney. And so a couple of the stations had a new time slot that they had choice to either fill it with local news, like create a whole new newscast, or continue on with the programming that was on already. And KFSN was one of the ones that chose to add a new newscast. Our earliest afternoon show was the 4 o'clock, which I was already doing. And so when the 3 o'clock was kind of available or a thought, I guess, at the time, I jumped at the opportunity. I have 2 young boys at home. So, staying on the same dayside shift was a dream for me. But also, it was all a blank slate. We knew that there were some other news stations doing a 3 o'clock news, but we didn't know what that looked like. And we didn't want it to be exactly like someone else's show. We wanted it to be our own. And what it is today, it's been a year now, is completely different than it was in the beginning, which I'm proud to say because we've evolved, we've adjusted, we've seen what works, what doesn't work. I mean, we've had 5-minute interviews air and we were like, that was a little too long. So now we're like, okay, 3 o'clock's kind of the sweet spot here for us. We get to feature adoptable pets in our area. So we work with 4 different shelters. And so they bring in a dog on our set and our anchors get to pet and show off this dog. And hopefully they get adopted. So we get to do kind of some fun things on that. We've had live entertainment, singers, performers. We feature a lot of authors. So just, live theater. So that's been fun. It's been a kind of spot where those things can live, where they don't really have a space anywhere else in our newscasts that kind of are just more of your traditional local news kind of anchor, story, reporter, things like that. So we have some of that too, but not as much.
That's awesome. And that's so cool that you were there from the start of it
Yeah.
and we'll be there to see it continue grow and shape and morph into whatever its next phase will be. And that's awesome with the adopted pets getting to have that time. That's so cool and seems very community oriented. It seems like everything you listed, like arts and animals, just really very community oriented segments, which is awesome. That's so great. So how do you and your team keep Live at 3 fresh and relevant for your audience?
It depends on what's happening, I guess, in the world. We just had this Southern California fires, and I had a couple people reach out to me about just checking in on your mental health or air quality experts, because that also does affect us here in the Central California. That smoke often does end up seeping into where we live as well, or we have family members that live there. I think just staying on the top of mind with Southern California, for example, we had the Red Cross reach out to us and just kind of how to help. And I think just staying with those headlines, Christmas, the holidays just went by. We had so many different opportunities to focus in on that shopping experience, that consumer, buying video games for your kids or technology and things like that. So it was kind of a busy time, but also just it was when it's obvious like that, that's what makes it easy. It's the times it's the in-betweeners. So you're like, I don't know what to do. But that's when people like you come in and step in and shoot me an email about an opportunity.
I'm glad I'm able to help. Yeah, that's so interesting and so true about the wildfires too. It's like, the obvious news story, here's what's happening, live news coverage of where the fires are and air quality, but then taking it a step further to like, okay, but what's the mental health impact? And what if I'm not near the fires, but I have family who is, and I'm really nervous and worried about them. So that's great. You guys also are taking it to that next level of coverage of it's not just what's happening now, but how will this affect us in a few days, in a few weeks, in a year? How will this kind of linger and stay with us? So that's great that you guys are focusing on the mental health perspective and angle too. So from your perspective, what do you think makes a story resonate most with a local news audience?
I think seeing actionable steps people can take. I think a lot of people do the news and want to know how they can help or what to do next. If it is something like a tragic loss, people want to donate or click on a link, or even GoFundMe's are great, where people want some way to do something actionable, or even a website to visit. If you need help with mental health, or if you need health insurance, or if you are interested in therapy, I like providing a way for people to do more research or look into it more for themselves. I think a lot of times people just I think you could do a story and then just move on to the next. And it's not, people feel like there's more to it. So that's what resonates with the audience, is ways that they can get involved.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like nothing is more unsettling than watching a news story or something horrible's happened. And it's like, okay, now on to the next story. Well, no. Like, how can I make a change or take action? It's always nice to have that next step and not just say, okay, well, this is what's happening, got to move on, or, on to the next thing. So that's great that you guys really focus on taking a beat and thinking through, okay, what can our community and people do? And also kind of putting yourself in their perspective of, I was seeing this story. What kind of questions would I have? What would I want to do next with it? I love that. So, for our audience of association PR professionals, what is the best way to pitch a story that gets your attention?
I think kind of what we were talking about a little earlier is topical, maybe timely stories in light of recent headlines. When I get those opportunities, I like to air those as close to timeframe as possible, rather than maybe having the air date a little later in time, although those are nice to have as well. We call it HFR in the news world. So it's like hold for another day, hold for, but I also just love a thought out pitch and just having a relationship with somebody where you can just shoot each other back and forth and just be like, hey, do you like this one? I know you record on Tuesdays and Thursdays. It's just appreciated by producers I know, like me, having B-roll available, having suggested questions, the person's name and title, and then also just being open about who is providing this interviewee, and being open and honest about that instead of trying to hide it. Like, hey, this is who's providing this person or this interview. And I like that upfrontness, and I appreciate that as a journalist as well.
Yeah, I know it's been a handful of stories that we've worked on together where it's been great to go back and forth and like, okay, what if we did this angle? I know during the election, we had like an election anxiety, family tensions piece come out. So it's great to go back and forth and think through, what timing makes the most sense? When is the story going to have the most impact? So that was, it's really great to have a relationship with producers like yourself that we can go back and forth with and, better hone our pitches to match what you guys are focusing on. So kind of opposite question, looking at the other side of things. So what are some of the worst kinds of pitches you've gotten, or what kind of pitches really turn you off and you're just like, nope, not going to look at that one?
I think it's kind of maybe those more mass emails. It feels like it's been sent to everyone and not really specific to what I do on Live at 3. It can feel a little spammy. I don't think it's probably meant to be that way, or if it's a business or an organization that is not anywhere here locally, I think just a little research on that end of if it's for a business that we don't even have in California, that's kind of something too. Like it just takes, I think, a quick Google search to see, are there any of these locations in Fresno? So I think that would be one where I just delete. Move on.
Makes sense. Got to get those out of the inbox.
Yeah.
If there's not even a location in Fresno, then what is the point of covering that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
Awesome. So I'd love to know more about the role that both journalists and PR professionals play. I know we've kind of gotten into this a bit so far today, but, I'd love to know your thoughts on the role that we play in ensuring both accurate and impactful storytelling, and why that collaboration is so important to have.
Yeah, I think we kind of need each other in a weird way. When you understand the other person's goals or what their objective is, and we're all doing our jobs. And I think it's nice when you have that relationship with someone when you know and trust each other. And if there is something that falls apart, it's like, okay, that's fine. Like, no big deal. We'll try for it next time. Or a guest doesn't show up, pop on their Zoom screen or something. It's not the end of the world for us. But I think building those relationships is the most important. I've kind of built new ones like yourself in the past year that I've kind of grown to just kind of trust and know that they're someone I can trust. They can help me work this out. It takes time. Just like any relationship, a business relationship is similar to any other type of relationship, but it is extra nice when you're just friendly with that person.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it is so special, the kind of relationship between journalists and PR professionals, and how we, both of our agendas, but both are able to help each other out and really doing the important work of spreading stories and getting people's perspectives out there, which is so important.
I think also too, it's like an old school saying where it's that thought of like journalism and PR, and they can't mix, their enemies sort of stuff. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because we do live in different worlds, but that doesn't mean you can't work together.
Yeah, exactly. I know in a lot of my PR classes, it's very much journalists are going to hate you and they're not going to like working with you, which, if you do things a certain way, that certainly can be true. But if you really focus on the relationship building aspect and, actually having a meaningful partnership, then it's totally valuable for both parties and both sides. So
Totally.
I'm, very fortunate for relationships like we have together, where we're able to just kind of bounce ideas and really tell important stories. So, all right. As someone who has navigated the evolving local news landscape, what trends or challenges do you see shaping the future of local journalism? So looking ahead, I know we've done lots of reflecting. So looking ahead on what you see shaping the future.
Our newsroom has already become, it's amazing how much we can do with such a small amount of people, which is like, it's great because our crew right now is our anchor. It's me as the producer, and it's my director. And he's the one that's operating the cameras, the graphic, the video. And I think it's going to probably evolve even more to a downsize. I mean, you see journalists out there with phones. They don't even need a big camera. They have their iPhone and they're doing interviews. I could see how that can be something that's fearful for some people, but also I see it as more of flexibility where we can be and do and cover even more with less. And I think it's going to result in more meaningful stories, and we're going to be just more out there than ever before. And who knows in the future what technology there will be. So live streaming, live newscasts, I don't know. Live newscasts in the field. So,
yeah, I think that's such a great outlook and perspective to have. Yes, journalism is changing and how it's taking shape and how it's being done. Like you said, how people can go out in the field and record stuff and have a really impactful news story from their iPhone. It doesn't have to be a whole camera crew and a setup. And you're exactly right. That's going to allow people to cover more stories and have more reach and perhaps tell a different angle or a different perspective, since all of those other pieces maybe aren't as needed anymore, which is so interesting to think about how it's going to change. And also, as we mentioned earlier too, social media and TikTok and Instagram Reels and everything, everything happening all at once. So it's really exciting to kind of think about, overwhelming, but also exciting to think about where things are going to be a year, 5 years, 10 years from now, and how the news scene will definitely change.
right.
All right. So before we let you go, we'd like to wrap up all of our podcasts with fun lightning round questions to let our audience get to know you a little bit better. So first question, have you gotten to get away to anywhere fun lately? Any fun vacations or trips that you've taken?
Yeah. So my husband and I celebrated 10 years married, and we made a little trip to Paso Robles over here on the coast of California. And it's this cute, nice wine country area. And we had an Airbnb and we were kid free for a week. So it was a nice time to just disconnect and spend time together. So that was really fun.
Oh, that's awesome. And my parents are always asking for Airbnb gift cards. So like, please get us out of the house and away from our children. And
It's
we
the
would,
best.
any gifts, we would like Airbnb gift cards. So
yeah, that's a great
awesome.
idea.
What podcasts are you listening to that you recommend to our listeners?
So I am a huge podcast junkie. I commute 50 minutes each way. My favorite podcast was the first one I ever listened to. I was recommended by a colleague to listen to This American Lives. And each episode is just, they do amazing work. But I'm also a true crime girly as well. So Morbid is my other favorite one. And most recently, I started getting into one called Am I in a Cult? And that one is just about not only just cults, but like cult-like atmospheres. So it's a lot. If you want to laugh, go listen to that one.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I know a lot of my colleagues and a lot of our ONU teammates are big crime junkies and love listening to all those. I haven't gotten into them yet, but I feel like you might have convinced me. That last one sounds good. What is one place in the U.S. you've never been to but are dying to go?
New York has always been, I want to go and do all the touristy things. I want to see Statue of Liberty. I want to go see a Broadway play. I want to eat some pizza, deep dish. But yeah, that would be my dream.
That's awesome. I've been very fortunate to go to New York a few times, and it's so much fun every single time. And it's fun to do all those touristy things and like go see a Broadway play, the Statue of Liberty, and Central Park. It's all worth it. So that's awesome. And then last little fun question here. Finish this sentence. When you see me looking at my phone, it probably means that I'm
playing some mindless, stupid game on my phone.
Love it.
And kind of nerdy. I just downloaded Pokemon Go again, and I'm like, ooh, let's catch a Pokemon. But it's just gosh, just to get my mind off of things.
I love that. I totally forgot about that game. I feel like maybe it'll make a resurgence.
It's making a comeback. I'm telling you.
Oh my gosh. That's awesome. Well, Alysia, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been such a blast and a really great conversation. And we really appreciate you sharing your insights with us in the podcast.
Of course. Love talking to you.
That's a wrap for today's episode. The Association 100 Podcast is a production of Onward and Upward Marketing and Communications, where our mission is to make associations and nonprofits the go-to source in their industries through earned media and thought leadership. This podcast is an extension of the A100 newsletter, a bi-monthly collection of best practices, top trends, helpful ideas, and smart strategies delivered straight to your inbox. Have you undertaken a big change at your association, or do you have some words of wisdom for the trenches of association life? We want to hear from you, and so do our listeners. Drop us a note at info@onwardupward.com. That's info@onwardupward.com. If you like what you heard today, be sure to subscribe, give us a 5-star review, and share with your friends and colleagues. We're available anywhere podcasts are found. Come back next week for more association inspiration and insights. Thanks for tuning in.